Oop, my mic was muted. I was like, oh, whoops. Yeah, good morning. Good morning, good morning. Happy Friday. Let's go. It's Friday. Friday. And not much has happened since Monday, TBH. Aside from the stuff. What was it? I did Twitch stream and talked about how we're gonna be on YouTube for the most part now. Well, that's basically it. You already know that because I already talked about it like last Saturday, I think. I think I talked about it last Saturday. I don't remember. Hopefully you're all doing well today. We're gonna read Peter Pan. Yeah. And I'm hoping the music isn't too loud because I have the music kind of there. It's a YouTube Rini. Hi, Alice. Yeah, it's a YouTube Rini. Let's go. I have to change the text later. I forgot. I put the text on the screen, but I forgot to change the color. Oop. Oh yeah. Oops. No. My chat, bring it back. There it is. Okay, I was just like, where's my chat? It's an Alice. Hello. Hopefully you're doing well today, Alice. We're gonna read Peter Pan today. Peter Pan. I never realized my tail really, like, goes way off the screen. I originally I'm in the corner, and so when I'm in the middle, I'm like, I didn't realize how long my tail is. My tail's pretty damn long. Sheesh. I'm just staring like, whoa. But yeah, the rest of the schedule will be we'll be reading Peter Pan today, and then tomorrow playing more Bread and Fred with Wei. And then Sunday is not on the next schedule yet because I have to post that after tomorrow. But I'll be on my friend's Duty debut stream on her Twitch channel. So yeah. Play prop night at like 3 p.m. I believe. I'm not streaming it, but I'll be on her channel. Doing good. Finished animal chores and now getting lunch. Ooh, happy lunch. Lunch, let's go. Hopefully you have good lunchy. Happy tail. Yeah, happy tail. My tail's so long. Oh my god. Tampons to you. What? I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, I swear. I didn't do nothing. Did no such things. It's a tacti. Dun, da, da, da. My stream will be about. Actually, we'll see how long it can go. Because I have some things I need to get done. Need to go grocery shopping and also go get some food. Breathe with no shrimp. But shrimp. But shrimping's fun. You know, on the topic of shrimping, I've been a fangirl of something since I was a schmole goddess. Since I was super small. I've always been a fangirl of something. Someone, like... always. As I guess it makes sense, because my mom was also a fangirl, so... I'll be looking because I'm watching Ooh, JoJo! Enjoy that JoJo. JoJo! Wonder if YouTube will give us channel redeems in the future? In the near future? I don't know. I don't know. Because once you hit their affiliate program thingy, partner program thingy, you can have like memberships, supas, and stuff like that. I think it was emotes too. I forget. Happy JoJo. Happy JoJo. I think this music fits Peter Pan, I think. Do you guys think this or rain? Like rain sounds. I can find some rain sounds. This one's nice too. This is usually like my usual like loading screen music that I have. Need. Yeah, need right now is just emotes in my Discord essentially. Again, just met Polnarv and was immediately like, oh god, not another Jimbier. Oh no. Oh my god. This. Yeah, we need emotes. No, it's okay if you don't, because most of the time when I do any kind of emote, it's just this. Whatever do I think, it's just this typically. I don't know. It's always that. Usually if like my hands are busy or I'm busy in general doing something, I won't do that and just do an emote, but usually I do that. Just in general. Right? See? See, just a little face. Ooh. Not the oohs. No. Oh yeah, that one too. The X3. I remember one time I was talking to my parents, right? And I like texting them and I pressed the X3, the XD, and they're like, what does this mean? I'm like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And they were like, you youngins are weird. I'm like, okay. Yeah, my mom like spams a bajillion emotes at me when she talks to text. After I showed her the emotes, there was no going back. Now she just sends me a bunch of emotes that don't make sense, and I'm like, what? Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. But yeah, today we're gonna read Peter Pan. In case you're wondering, the text is based on the 1911 original publication and not the like more recent one that was from like 1991 or whatever. So if that helps. Because I know some people wanted to read Peter Pan, but they're like, isn't it too new for it to be public domain? And I was like, no, if you use the original text, and they're like, oh yeah, the original text is in the public domain. I'm like, why do you think they're able to make that newer version? Because it's in the public domain. Yeah. And also, I don't know how many chapters are in this. Hold on. How many chapters are in Peter Pan? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's 17 chapters? That's a lot. You know, I'm always surprised by how many chapters are in these things because they're supposed to be children's books, right? And I was like, 17 chapters in a children's book? Holy shit. But let's start with chapter 1. Peter breaks through. I'm gonna turn my headphones down on my end so it's not too loud. But if the music's too loud in comparison to my voice, just let me know and I'll turn it down more. Or I can switch it to like rain sounds. I don't know which one's better, honestly. This music or rain sounds, but we'll see. I'll watch the VOD later and see which one might be better. But right now, whatever one you guys want. All children, except one, grow up. They soon know that they will grow up. And the way Wendy knew was this. One day, when she was 2 years old, she was playing in a garden and she plucked another flower and ran with it to her mother. I suppose she must have looked rather delightful, for Miss Darling put her hand to her heart and cried, "Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?" This was all that passed between them on the subject, but henceforth Wendy knew that she must grow up. You always know after you are 2. 2 is the beginning of the end. Of course, they lived at 14, and until Wendy came, her mother was the chief one. And she was a lovely lady with a romantic mind and such a sweet, mocking mouth. Her romantic mind was like the tiny boxes, one within the other, that come from the puzzling East. However many you discover, there's always one more. And her sweet mocking mouth had one kiss on it that Wendy could never get, though there it was, perfectly conspicuous in the right-hand corner. The way Mr. Darling won her was this. The many gentlemen who had been boys when she was a girl discovered simultaneously that they loved her, and they all ran to her house to propose to her, except Mr. Darling, who took a cab and nipped in first, and so he got her. He got all of her except the innermost box and the kiss. He never knew about the box, and in time, he gave up trying for the kiss. Wendy thought Napoleon could have got it, but I can picture him trying and then going off in a passion, slamming the door. Mr. Darling used to boast to Wendy that her mother not only loved him but respected him. He was one of those deep ones who know about stocks and shares. Of course, no one really knows, but he quite seemed to know, and he often said stocks were up and shares were down in a way that would have made any woman respect him. Miss Darling was married in white, and at first she kept the books perfectly, almost gleefully, as if it were a game. Not so much as a Brussels sprout was missing, but by and by, whole cauliflowers dropped out. And instead of them, there were pictures of babies without faces. She drew them when she should have been totting up. They were Miss Darling's guesses. Wendy came first, then John, then Michael. For a week or two after Wendy came, it was doubtful whether they would be able to keep her, as she was another mouth to feed. Mr. Darling was frightfully proud of her, but he was very honorable, and he sat on the edge of Miss Darling's bed, holding her hand and calculating expenses. She looked at him imploringly. She wanted to risk it, come what might, but that was not his way. His way was with a pencil and a piece of paper, and if she confused him with suggestions, he had to begin at the beginning again. Now don't interrupt, he would beg of her. I have £1.17 here, and 2 and 6 at the office. I can cut off my coffee at the office, say 10 shillings, making 2, 9, and 6. With your 18 and 3 makes 3, 9, 7. With 5 not on my checkbook makes 8, 9, 7. Who's that moving? 8, 9, 7, dot, and carry 7. Don't speak my own, and the pound you lent to the man who came to the door. And quiet, child, dot, carry, child. There, you've done it. Did I say 9, 9, 7? Yes, I said 9, 9, 7. The question is, can we try it for a year on 997? Of course we can, George, she cried. But she was prejudiced in Wendy's favor, and he was really the grander character of the two. Remember Mumps? He warned her almost threateningly, and off he went again. Mumps, £1. That is what I have put down, but I dare say it will be more like 30 shillings. Don't speak measles, 1.5. German measles, half a guinea. Makes 2.15, 6. Don't waggle your finger. Whooping cough, say 15 shillings. And so on it went. And it added up differently each time. But at last, Wendy just got through, with the mumps reduced to 12.6, and the 2 kinds of measles treated as 1. And there was the same excitement over John and Michael. Had even a narrower squeak, but both were kept, and soon you might have seen the 3 of them going in a row to Miss Folsom's kindergarten school, accompanied by their nurse. Miss Darling loved to have everything just so, and Mr. Darling had a passion for being exactly like his neighbors. So, of course, they had a nurse, as they were poor, owing to the amount of milk the children drank. This nurse was a prim Newfoundland dog called Nana, who had belonged to no one in particular until the Darlings engaged her. She had always thought children important. However, the Darlings had become acquainted with her in Kensington Gardens, where she kept most of her spare time peeping into perambulators and was much hated by careless nursemaids, whom she followed to their homes and complained of to their mistresses. She proved to be quite a treasure of a nurse. How thorough she was at bath time, and up at any moment of the night if one of her charges made the slightest cry. Of course, her kennel was in the nursery. She had a genius for knowing when a cough is a thing to have no patience with and when it needs stalking around your throat. She believed her last day in old-fashioned remedies, a rhubarb leaf, and made sounds of contempt over all this newfangled talk about germs and so on. It was a lesson in propriety to see her escorting the children to school, walking sedatively by their side when they were well behaved, and butting them back into line if they strayed. On John's footer days, she never once forgot a sweater, and she usually carried an umbrella in her mouth in case of rain. There's a room in the basement of Miss Folsom's school where the nurses wait. They sat on forms while Nana lay on the floor, but that was the only difference. They affected to ignore her as of inferior social status to themselves, and she despised their light talk. And she resented visits to the nursery from Miss Darling's friends, but if they did come, she first whipped off Michael's pinafore and put him into the one with blue braiding, and smoothed out Wendy and made a dash at John's hair. No nursery could possibly have been conducted more correctly, and Mr. Darling knew it. Yet he sometimes wondered uneasily whether the neighbors talked. He had his position in the city to consider. Nana also troubled him in another way. He had sometimes a feeling that she did not admire him. "I know she admires you tremendously, George," Miss Darling would assure him. And then she would sign to the children to be specifically nice to father. Lovely dances followed, in which the only other servant, Lisa, was sometimes allowed to join. Such a midget she looked in her long skirt and maid's cap, though she had sworn when engaged that she would never see 10 again. The gaiety of those romps. And of all was Miss Darling, who would pirouette so wildly that all you could see of her was a kiss. And then, if you had dashed at her, you might have got it. There's a simpler, happier family until the coming of Peter Pan. Peter Pan! Miss Darling first heard of Peter when she was tidying up her children's minds. It is the nightly custom of every good mother, after her children are asleep, to rummage in their minds and put things straight for the next morning, repacking into their proper places the many articles that have wandered during the day. If you could keep awake, but of course you can't. You would see your own mother doing this, and you would find it very interesting to watch her. It is quite like tidying up drawers. You would see her on her knees, I expect, lingering humorously over some of your contents, wondering where on earth you had picked this up, making discoveries sweet and not so sweet. Pressing this to her cheek as if it were as nice as a kitten, and hurriedly stowing that out of sight. When you wake in the morning, the naughtiest and evil passions with which you went to bed have been folded up small and placed at the bottom of your mind, and on the top, beautifully aired, are spread out your prettier thoughts, ready for you to put on. I don't know whether you have ever seen a map of a person's mind. Doctors sometimes draw maps of other parts of you. And your own mind, and your own map can become intensely interesting. But catch them trying to draw a map of a child's mind, which is not only confused, but keeps going around all the time. There are zigzag lines on it, just like your temperature on a card. And there are probably roads in the island, for the Neverland is always more or less an island, with astonishing splashes of color here and there, and coral reefs, and rakish-looking craft, and offing, and the savages, and lonely lairs, and gnomes who are mostly tailors, and caves through which a river runs, and princes with 6 elder brothers, and a hut fast going to decay, and one very small old lady with a hooked nose. It would be an easy map if that were all, but there is also first day at school, religion, fathers, the round pond, needlework, murders, hangings, verbs that take the dative, chocolate pudding day, getting into braces, say 99, 3 pence, and for pulling out your tooth yourself, and so on. And either these are part of the island, or they are another map is showing through. And it is all rather confusing, especially as nothing will stand still. Of course, the Netherlands vary a good deal. John's, for instance, had a lagoon with flamingos flying over it, at which John was shooting, while Michael, who was very small, had a flamingo with lagoons flying over it. John lived in a boat turned upside down on the sands. Michael in a wigwam, Wendy in a house of leaves, deftly sewn together. John had no friends. Michael had friends at night. Wendy had a pet wolf forsaken by its parents. But on the whole, the Neverlands have a family resemblance, and if they stood still in a row, you could say of them that they have each other's nose, and so forth. On these magic shores, children at play are forever breaching their quarrels. We too have been there. We can still hear the sound of the surf, though we shall land no more. Of all delectable islands, the Neverland is the snuggiest and most compact. Not large or sprawly, the tedious distances between one adventure and another, but nicely crammed. And you play at it by day, with chairs and tablecloth. And it's not in the least alarming, but in the 2 minutes before you go to sleep, it becomes very real. That is why there are nightlights. Occasionally in her travels through her children's minds, Miss Darling found things she could not understand. And of those, quite the most perplexing was the word Peter. She knew of no Peter, and yet he was here and there in John and Michael's minds. While Wendy's began to be scrawled all over with him. The name stood out in bolder letters than any of the other words. and as Miss Darling gazed, she felt that it had an oddly cocky appearance. And yes, he is rather cocky, Wendy admitted with regret. Her mother had been questioning her. But who is he, my pet? He is Peter Pan, you know, Mother. At first, Miss Darling did not know, but after thinking back into her childhood, she just remembered a Peter Pan who was said to live with the fairies. There were odd stories about him, as that when children died, he went part of the way with them, so that they should not be frightened. She had believed in him at the time, but now that she was married, in a full sense, she quite doubted whether there was any such person. Besides, she said to Wendy, he would be grown up by this time. Oh no, he isn't grown up, Wendy assured her confidently. And he is just my size. She meant that he was her size in both mind and body. She didn't know how she knew, she just knew it. Miss Darling consulted Mr. Darling, but he smiled. Mark my words, he said. It is some nonsense Nana has been putting into their heads. Just the sort of idea a dog would have. Leave it alone, and it will blow over. But it would not blow over, and soon the troublesome boy gave Miss Darling quite a shock. Children have the strangest adventures without being troubled by them. For instance, they may remember to mention, a week after the event happened, that when they were in the wood, they had met their dead father and had a game with him. It was in this casual way that Wendy one morning made a disquieting revelation. Some leaves of a tree had been found on the nursery floor, which certainly were not there when the children went to bed. And Miss Darling was puzzling over them when Wendy said with a tolerant smile, I do believe it is that Peter again. Whatever you mean, Wendy. It is so naughty of him not to wipe his feet, Wendy said, sighing. She was a tidy child. And she explained in quite a matter-of-fact way that she thought Peter sometimes came to the nursery in the night and sat on the foot of her bed and played on his pipes to her. Unfortunately, she never woke, so she didn't know how she knew, she just knew. What nonsense you talk, Precious. No one can get into the house without knocking. I think he comes in by the window, she said. My love, it is 3 floors up. Were not the leaves at the foot of the window, Mother? It was quite true. The leaves had been found very near the window. Miss Darling did not know what to think, for it all seemed so natural to Wendy that she could not dismiss it by saying she had been dreaming. My child, the mother cried. Why did you not tell me of this before? I forgot, said Wendy lightly. She was in a hurry to get to her breakfast. Oh, Surely she must have been dreaming. But on the other hand, there were the leaves. Miss Darling examined them very carefully. They were skeleton leaves, but she was sure they did not come from any tree that grew in England. She crawled about the floor, peering at it with a candle for marks of a strange foot. She rattled the poker up the chimney and tapped the walls. She let down a tape from the window to the pavement, and it was a sheer drop of 30 feet, without so much as a sprout to climb up by. Certainly Wendy had been dreaming. But Wendy had not been dreaming, as the very next night showed, the night on which the extraordinary adventures of these children may be said to have begun. Okay, I need some water. I thought they were gonna go into the next chapter, but this, I was like, this chapter, I was like, it's never ending, and I was like, okay, well. The water is really cold. Oh, that's gonna mess up my throat. Oh well. I thought I put warm water in my water bottle. I was like, oh my god. Oh boy. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like as a kid, if I read a book and the chapter was like extremely long, I was like, eh. Which explains why I like manga and webtoons so much. Because I can like go through that super fast and be like, wee. But then again, it's just, that's okay. I feel like as I got older, I got used to it. But when I was younger, I was like, I don't want to read too many chapters, too long. Yeah, long chapters. No, it makes sense because it's actually a decent amount of chapters. I was like, there's less chapters. If the chapters were shorter, there would be more of them too. Cause I think in The Wizard of Oz there was like 20 something chapters, and I was like, oh my god. But the chapters were pretty short. I will stay hydrated, Alice, because I don't have anyone bullying me to stay hydrated. Like, yeah, stay hydrated. Okay. Water good. Don't forget to hydrate too. Don't forget to hydrate. Yeah. Let's see. Where did I stop? Somewhere around. Oh, this one. On the night we speak, of all the children were once more in bed. It happened to be Nana's evening off, and Miss Darling had bathed them and sung to them till one by one they had let go of her hand and slid away into the land of sleep. All were looking so safe and cozy, and that she smiled at her fears now and sat down tranquilly by the fire to sew. It was something for Michael, who, on his birthday, was getting into shirts. The fire was warm, however the nursery dimly lit by 3 night lights, and presently the sewing lay on Miss Darling's lap. Then her head nodded, oh so gracefully. She was asleep. Look at the 4 of them, Wendy and Michael over there, John here, and Miss Darling by the fire. There should have been a 4th nightlight. While she slept, she had a dream. She dreamt that the Neverland had come too near, and that a strange boy had broken through from it. He did not alarm her, for she thought she had seen him before in faces of many women who have no children. Perhaps he is to be found in the faces of some mothers also. But in her dream, he had read the film that obscures the Neverland, and she saw Wendy and John and Michael peeping through the gap. The dream by itself would have been a trifle, but while she was dreaming, the window of the nursery blew open, and a boy did drop on the floor. He was accompanied by a strange light, no bigger than your fist, which darted about the room like a living thing, and I think it must have been this light that awakened Miss Darling. She started up with a cry and saw the boy, and somehow she knew at once that he was Peter Pan. If you, or I, or Wendy had been there, we should have seen that he was very like Miss Darling's kiss. He was a lovely boy clad in skeleton leaves, and the juices that ooze out of the trees were the most entrancing thing about him was that he had all his first teeth. When he saw she was grown up, he gnashed the little pearls at her. Well, this is interesting. Yeah, I was at the end of the first chapter. I was like, what the is going on? It's very confusing. Especially like a lot of the like old wording. I'm just like, I don't know what this means. I'm like, what are those? But interesting. I don't remember if they ever made a Peter Pan movie based on the original story, because I only remember the newer versions and none of them start this way. So that's why I'm like, huh. Funny enough, it is thundering outside. It is indeed thundering outside, and I think it's gonna rain. Oh no. Maybe I should change the music to rain music. Hold on, let me see if I can find rain music real quick. Rain sounds. Ah, I found rain sounds. I don't know if the rain sounds are very loud though. Hopefully they're maybe here would be better. Here-ish, maybe? Is this too loud? I can't tell. I can't tell. Okay, drink some more water. Seems to be okay, I think. Kind of jumps a little bit, but should be okay, I think. Maybe because since I'm whispering and not actually like talking in my normal voice, it's like slightly quieter. But it's fine. It's fine. Okay, chapter 2, The Shadow. Miss Darling screamed, and as if in answer to a bell, the door opened, and Nana entered, returning from her evening out. She growled and sprang at the boy, who leapt lightly through the window. Again, Miss Darling screamed, this time in distress for him, for she thought he was killed. And she ran down to the street to look for this little boy, but for his little body, but it was not there. And she looked up. In the black night, she could see nothing but what she thought was a shooting star. She returned to the nursery and found Nana with something in her mouth, which proved to be the boy's shadow. As he leapt at the window, Nana had closed it quickly, too late to catch him. But his shadow had not had time to get out. A slam went into the window and snapped it off. You may be sure Miss Darling examined the shadow carefully, but it was quite the ordinary kind. Nana had no doubt of what was the best thing to do with this shadow. She hung it out at the window, meaning he is sure to come back for it. Let us put it where he can get it easily without disturbing the children. But unfortunately, Miss Darling could not leave it hanging out of the window. It looked like the washing and lowered the whole tone of the house. She thought of showing it to Mr. Darling, but he was totting up winter greatcoats for John and Michael, with a wet towel around his head to keep his brain clear, and it seemed a shame to trouble him. Besides, she knew exactly what he would say. It all comes of having a dog for a nurse. She decided to roll the shadow up and put it away carefully in a drawer until a fitting opportunity came for telling her husband. The opportunity came a week later, on that never-to-be-forgotten Friday. Of course it was Friday. I ought to have especially careful on a Friday, she used to say afterwards to her husband, while perhaps Nana was on the other side of her, holding her hand. No, no, Mr. Darling always said. I'm responsible for it all. George Darling did it. Mi culpa, mi culpa. He had a classical education. They sat thus night after night, recalling that fatal Friday, till every detail of it was stamped on their brains and came through on the other side like the faces on a bad coinage. If only I had not accepted that invitation to dine at 27, Miss Darling said. If only I had not poured my medicine into Nana's bowl, said Mr. Darling. If only I had pretended to like the medicine, was what Nana's wet eyes said. My liking for parties, George. My fatal gift of humor, dearest. My touchiness about trifles, dear master and mistress. When one or more of them would break down altogether, Nana had the thought, it's true. It's true. They ought not to have had a dog for a nurse. Many a time it was Mr. Darling who had put the handkerchief to Nana's eyes. That fiend, Mr. Darling would cry, and Nana's bark was the echo of it. But Miss Darling never upbraided Peter. There was something in the right-hand corner of her mouth that wanted her not to call Peter's name. They would sit there in the empty nursery, recalling fondly every smallest detail of that dreadful evening. It had begun so eventful, so precisely, like 100 other evenings, with Nana putting on a water for Michael's bath and carrying him to it on her back. "I won't go to bed," he had shouted, like one who was still believed that he had the last word on the subject. "I won't. I won't. Nana, it isn't 6 o'clock yet. Oh dear, oh dear. I shan't love you any more, Nana. I tell you I won't be bathed. I won't. I won't." And then Miss Darling had come in wearing her white evening gown. She had dressed early because Wendy so loved to see her in her evening gown. The necklace George had given her. She was wearing Wendy's bracelet on her arm. She had asked for the loan of it. Wendy loved to bend her bracelet to her mother. She had found her 2 older children playing at being herself and father on the occasion of Wendy's birth, and John was saying, "Nana." "Yeah, Nana. The doggo. The puppo." Wait, is the puppo called Nana in like the remake versions too? I don't remember. But it's the way lazy. "I'm happy to inform you, Miss Darling, that you are now a mother," in such a tone as Mr. Darling himself may have used on the real occasion. Wendy had danced with joy, just as the real Miss Darling must have done. Then John was born. The extra pomp that he conceived due to the birth of a male, and Michael came from his bath to ask to be born also. But John had said brutally that they did not want any more. Michael had clearly cried, or nearly cried. "Nobody wants me," he said. And of course the lady in the evening dress could not stand that. "I do," she said. "I still want a 3rd child. Boy or girl?" asked Michael, not too hopefully. "Boy." Then he had leapt into her arms. Such a little thing for Mr. and Miss Darling, and Nana to recall now, but not so little if that was to be Michael's last night in the nursery. They go on with their recollection. "It was then that I rushed in like a tornado, wasn't it?" Mr. Darling would say, scorning himself. And indeed, he had been like a tornado. Perhaps there was some excuse for him. He, too, had been dressing for the party, and all had gone well with him, until he came to his tie. It is an astounding thing to have to tell that this man, though he knew about stocks and shares, had no real mastery of his tie. Sometimes the thing yielded to him without a contest. There were occasions when it would have been better for the house if he had swallowed his pride, made a made-up tie. This was such an occasion. He came rushing into the nursery, the crumbled little brute of a tie in his hand. "Why, what is the matter, father dear?" "Matter?" he yelled. He really yelled. "This tie, it will not tie." He became dangerously sarcastic, not round my neck, round the bedpost, Oh yes, 20 times have I made it up round the bedpost, but round my neck, no. Oh dear no, begs to be excused. He thought Miss Darling was not sufficiently impressed. That he went on sternly. I warned you of this, mother, that unless this tie is around my neck, we won't go out to dinner tonight. And if I don't go out to dinner tonight, I never go to the office again. And if I don't go to the office again, you and I starve, and our children will be flung onto the streets. Even then, Miss Darling was placid. Let me try, dear, she said, and indeed, that was what he had come to ask her to do. And with her nice, cool hand, she tied his tie for him, while the children stood around to see their fate decided. Some men would have resented her for being able to do it so easily. But Mr. Darling had far too fine a nature for that. He thanked her carelessly, at once forgot his rage, and in another moment was dancing around the room with Michael on his back. How wildly we romped, said Miss Darling, now recalling it. The last romp, Mr. Darling groaned. Oh, George, do you remember Michael suddenly said to me, how did you get to know me, mother? I remember. They're rather sweet, don't you think, George? And they were ours. Ours, and now they are gone. The romp had ended with the appearance of Nana, and most unluckily, Mr. Darling collided against her, covering his trousers with hairs. They were not only new trousers, they were the first he had ever had with the braid on them, and he had to bite his lip to prevent the tears coming. Of course, Miss Darling brushed him, but he began to talk again about its being a mistake to have a dog for a nurse. George, Nana is a treasure. No doubt, but I have an uneasy feeling at times that she looks upon the children as puppies. Oh no, dear one. I feel sure she knows they have souls. I wonder, Mr. Darling said thoughtfully. I wonder. It was an opportunity his wife felt for telling him about the boy. At first, he pooh-poohed the story, but he became thoughtful when she showed him the shadow. It is nobody I know, he said, examining it carefully. But it does look a scoundrel. We are still discussing it, you remember? Said Mr. Darling. When Nana came in with Michael's medicine, you will never carry the bottle in your mouth again, Nana. And it is all my fault. A strong man though he was, there is no doubt that he had behaved rather foolishly over the medicine. If he had a weakness, it was for thinking that all his life he had taken medicine boldly, and so now, when Michael dodged the spoon in Nana's mouth, he had said reprovingly, "Be a man, Michael." I won't, Michael cried. Miss Darling left the room to get a chocolate for him, and Mr. Darling thought this showed want of firmness. Mother, don't pamper him, he called after her. Michael, when I was your age, I took medicine without a murmur. I said thank you. Kind parents, for giving me bottles to make me well. You really thought this was true, and Wendy, who was now in her nightgown, believed it also. She said to encourage Michael, the medicine you sometimes take, father, is much nastier, isn't it? Ever so much nastier, Mr. Darling said bravely. And I would take it now as an example to you, Michael, if I hadn't lost the bottle. He had not exactly lost it. He had climbed in the dead of night to the top of the wardrobe and hidden it there. What he did not know was that the faithful Eliza had found it and put it back on his washstand. I know where it is, father, Wendy cried, always glad to be of service. I'll bring it. And she was off before she could stop him. He was off before he could stop her. Immediately, his spirits sank in the strangest way. John, he said, shuddering, it's most beastly stuff. It's the nastiest, stickly sweet kind. It'll be over soon, father, John said cheerily, and then in rushed Wendy with the medicine in a glass. I have been as quick as I could, she panted. You have been wonderfully quick, her father retorted, with a vindictive politeness that was quite thrown away upon her. Michael first, he said dodgingly. Father first, said Michael, who was of a suspicious nature. I shall be sick, you know, Mr. Darling said threateningly. Come on, father, said John. Hold your tongue, John, his father rapped out. Wendy was quite puzzled. I thought you took it quite easily, father. That's not the point. The point is that there is more in my glass than in Michael's spoon. His brown heart was nearly bursting. It isn't fair, I would say. I would say it though it were with my last breath. It isn't fair. Father, I'm waiting, said Michael coldly. It's all very well to say you're waiting. So, am I waiting? Father is a cowardly custard. So are you a cowardly custard? A cowardly custard. Oh my god. I'm not frightened. Neither am I frightened. Well then, take it. Well then, you take it. Wendy had a splendid idea. Why not both take it at the same time? Certainly, said Mr. Darling. Are you ready, Mike? Wendy gave the words. 1, 2, 3. And Michael took his medicine, but Mr. Darling slipped his behind his back. There was a yell of rage from Michael, and "Oh, father!" Wendy exclaimed. Okay, more water for Rini. They're taking medicine here, and I'm like, I need water. But hopefully you are liking the story so far. It's very different from what I remember, which goes to show, like, how different the remake version is in comparison to the original text. I was like, it's so different. Oh my god. I think I'm good now. Okay. Where was I? Somewhere. Somewhere over here. Somewhere. Oops. Oh, there it is. Okay. What do you mean by, oh, father? Mr. Darling demanded. Stop that now, Michael. I meant to take mine, but I missed it. Oh, man. It was dreadful, the way all three were looking at him, just as if they did not admire him. Look here, all of you, he said entreatingly, as soon as Nana had gone to the bathroom. I have just thought of a splendid joke. I shall pour my medicine into Nana's bowl, and she will drink it, thinking it is milk. It was the color of milk, but the children did not have their father's sense of humor, and they looked at him reproachfully as he poured the medicine into Nana's bowl. What fun, he said doubtfully, and they did not dare expose him when Miss Darling and Nana returned. Nana, good dog, he said, patting her. I have put a little milk into your bowl, Nana. Nana wagged her tail and ran to the medicine and began lapping it. Then she gave Mr. Darling such a look, not an angry look. She showed him the great red tear that makes us so sorry for noble dogs, and crept into her kennel. Mr. Darling was frightfully ashamed of himself, but he would not give in. In a hoarse silence, Miss Darling smelt the bowl. Oh, George, she said, it's your medicine. It was only a joke, he roared. While she comforted her boys, and Wendy hugged Nana. Much good, he said bitterly. I'm wearing myself to the bone trying to be funny in this house. And still Wendy hugged Nana. That's right, he shouted. Coddle her. Nobody coddles me. Oh dear no. I am only the breadwinner. Why should I be coddled? Why? George, Miss Darling entreated him. Not so loud. The servants will hear you. Somehow, it had got into the way of calling Lisa the servants. Let them, he answered recklessly. Bring in the whole world, but I refuse to allow that dog to lord it in my nursery for an hour longer. The children wept, and Anna ran to him beseechingly, but he waved her back. He felt he was a strong man again. In vain. He cried, the proper place for you is the yard, and there you go, to be tied up this instant. George, Miss Darling whispered. Remember what I told you about that boy. Alas, he would not listen. He was determined to show who was the master of that house. And when commands would not draw Nana from the kennel, he lured her out with honeyed words, and seizing her roughly, dragged her from the nursery. He was ashamed of himself, and yet he did it. It was all owning to his too affectionate nature, which craved for admiration. When he had tied her up in the backyard, The wretched father went and sat in the passage, with his knuckles to his eyes. In the meantime, Miss Darling had put the children to bed in unwonted silence and lit their night lights. They could hear Nana barking, and John whimpered. It's because he is chaining her up in the yard. But Wendy was wiser. That is not Nana's unhappy bark, she said, little guessing what was about to happen. That is her bark when she smells danger. Danger? Are you sure, Wendy? Oh, yes. Miss Darling quivered and went to the window. It was securely fastened. She looked out, and the night was prepared with stars. They were crowded round the house, and was curious to see what was to take place there. But she did not notice this, nor that one or two of the smaller ones winked at her. Yet nameless fear clutched at her heart and made her cry, "Oh, I wish that I wasn't going to a party tonight." Even Michael, already half asleep, knew that she was perturbed. And he asked, "Can anything harm us, Mother, after the night lights are lit?" "Nothing, precious," she said. They are the eyes a mother leaves behind to guard her children. She went from bed to bed, singing enchantments over them, and little Michael flung his arms around her. "Mother," he cried, "I'm glad of you." They were the last words she was to hear from him for a long time. Number 27 was only a few yards distant. There had been a slight fall of snow, and Father and Mother Darling picked their way over it deftly, not to soil their shoes. They were already the only persons in the street, and all the stars were watching them. Stars are beautiful, but they may not take an active part in anything. They must just look on forever. What is a punishment put on them for something they did not so long ago that no star now knows what it was? So the older ones have become glassy-eyed and seldom speak. But the little ones still wonder. They're not really friendly to Peter, who had a mischievous way of stealing up behind them and trying to blow them out. They were so fond of fun that they were on his side tonight and anxious to get the grown-ups out of the way. So, as soon as the door of 27 closed on Mr. and Mrs. Darling, there was a commotion in the firmament, and the smallest of all the stars in the Milky Way screamed out, "Now, Peter." And that is the end of chapter 2. Let's go. Chapter 2, yeah. But that's where I'm going to stop for today. It's going to be this very short stream, but my voice is dying every time I read stuff, so that's a thing. And then also, I don't know what this thing meant, but it's over there. But also, I gotta go do some things too. So thanks for joining the short stream. Hopefully, next time we can read some more. But tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, we will be playing Bread and Fred with Wei. I'm also hungry. I want food. I can't exactly eat when I'm doing this, though. Because normally I would eat on stream, but can't do that this time. What's this thing? Oh, wait, it's there. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time for Bread and Fred. Thanks for joining the reading stream. Next time we'll read a little bit longer, and hopefully my voice won't die. Yeah, bye-bye. Have a good weekend if I don't see you tomorrow. And have a good rest of your day, night, whatever time zone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.